Hello, everyone, and welcome to our bi-weekly cert-manager development meeting. Today is the 25th of January, and we have Trilok. Is that correct? Is that your name?
Right. Yeah.
Trilok joining us, and the rest of us are Jetstack employees. Trilok, go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah. Great to see you guys. This is my first call with cert-manager team here. So you guys are really awesome. I was just looking through the cert-manager, and we are trying to get the cert-manager operator on OpenShift for a GA, and we want to support 1.10.2 release for the March. And yeah, so I was just trying to get a little bit of more information on the cert-manager. So to start with, for this call, I want to know more about, is there any limits that are defined on what's the max certificates that you support and things like that on the upstream?
I'm not aware of any.
That you have.
I'm not aware of any hard limits.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that, but I'm not aware of limits. Although one will be hit eventually on, like, with some number of certificates where things will start to go wrong. Just performance issues will start to creep in and what have you. I'm not aware of numbers for that, and it's very variable, obviously, depending on where and how cert-manager is deployed and used.
Okay.
Recently, Irbe made some great improvements to the memory usage, so that should also allow us to have even more certificates and work on even larger clusters. So it might have changed very recently. Not sure if that's backported already to the 1.10.2 release.
It is, yeah.
It is, okay, cool. So you should already experience some of that.
Cool.
Some of
so
those improvements.
if you guys can point me to a PR, that would be great.
Yeah, like as I think Ashley already said, we don't run performance tests. At the moment, like this, so like the number of certificates that will kind of, if they're all issued at the same time, there will obviously be more latency in like how fast issuance can be, and you can like modify. We do like client-side rate limiting that you can modify. There's like controller flags for that. You probably have already discovered this to modify like the QPS and burst, and then so like the latency is one thing. We don't really have metrics at the moment to measure like how saturated like the work queues are for the control ops, but that's kind of something that been maybe worth adding. And yeah, so like there's obviously is like the memory usage, and that at the moment will still depend on what other secret resources there are in the cluster, because cert-manager still caches like all secrets you have in cluster, which the largest ones won't be like the certificate secrets, probably they'll be like Helm release secrets. So and that's something we are kind of still working on, like to not cache all secret contents. But yeah, this will be one like the large installation kind of resource limit.
Okay, great. Right. So let me head back and maybe try to check more information on our side and get back to you guys. On the another question, what I have is okay. So the other question what I have is on the platform validation part. So if you guys have any test cases that you run to validate on a platform version, like Kubernetes version or OpenShift version, that I could refer to just to get the CI signals and stuff.
So I wish I had a slightly better way of saying this, but I'm not sure that CI signals are going to be tremendously useful, because some of our tests can flake occasionally, and there can be issues with those, but we certainly do validate against different Kubernetes versions, although probably not so much OpenShift versions. So where that's defined, where those version numbers are defined, I can give you a link to that. So our test specifications are generated from this structure in code. So the vast majority of the tests will be run against what we've defined as the primary Kubernetes version, and any other supported versions will have at least end-to-end tests run against them. That's using kind, so it's Kubernetes validation and not OpenShift. I don't believe we have explicit OpenShift tests, but we do have. We try to. We would say that any, like for any given OpenShift version, we support the version corresponding to Kubernetes release, right? Like, if that makes any sense at all. So, for OpenShift 4.8, we say we support that because we support Kubernetes 1.21.
Okay, got it. Great. Yeah. So on the other part that I would like to update from our side is on supporting integration with OpenShift routes. And so this is going to be kind of an integrated part with the routes. So it's still under review. So hopefully we'll make this integration smooth for the GA. And yeah, so once it is up, so I'll just let you guys know. Right. So yeah, and on the ingress part, so so we are directly integrating it with secrets. So we still assume the user will still create certificate rather than have all the annotations on the ingress. So this way, it is more easy to integrate with OpenShift routes, because there are users which prefer ingress rather than OpenShift routes. So we want to support all kinds of users. So just to give you guys a heads up, so there's going to be this feature coming in the GA versions.
So I am not fully across this feature because it was a while ago and I didn't work on it, but we do support OpenShift routes in some capacity already. Yeah, Irbe's on it. She probably knows a lot more than I do about this. But yeah, we did this work a while ago, and I'm not sure how much this is used. But it does exist. I don't know if that's helpful to you.
Yes, we definitely did give a look up for this. So what we found was we wanted to keep the implementation not too much coupled with cert-manager, because we do not have kind of an API library kind of a management in the cert-manager currently. So it would be hard for us to to maintain the release cadences up to to make up with the upstream cert-manager, right? So it'll be very hard for us to move into the different releases. So for now, to start with, we are integrating with the secrets directly. So there will be not much configuration that will be taken specific for the cert-manager, but we'll be using secrets generated by the certificates from the cert-manager. So that's how we are integrating currently. Yes, this poses a little bit of annoying issues, like if the user configures wrongly the renewal time. So you can see that the secrets are updated like half of the time, right? So based on your renewal time. So it's not exactly the expiry time where the user has the tendency to get those certificates updated, right? So yeah, so going further, maybe we can relook at this and see how the users come back with their feedback and stuff.
And so you're not using these OpenShift routes to do Acme HTTP 01, what's called, like it's called challenges.
Right.
You're not using it for that. You're just serving HTTP as endpoints through these routes. Is that what you're using for?
Right. So what we are trying to do is we are not trying to attach the routes directly with certificates. So all the issuer part and certificate issuance is still with the cert-manager, right? And OpenShift routes just only reloads all the TLS configuration that is generated on the secrets. So we tie up with the secrets, that are being used with the cert-manager, right? So this way it gives a better integration for the user. So if some user say like he wants to move from a non-cert-manager environment and he directly wants to deploy cert-manager, he doesn't have to make too many changes, but he can directly give the secret name, which directly integrates with the existing routes and everything, right? So it's kind of a seamless integration currently we are thinking of.
Cool. Yeah, I guess what Tim meant was whether, because like cert-manager has this internal mechanism where, for example, for ingress, when you solve an HTTP challenge, like cert-manager can create resources such as like ingress gateways. And that's obviously not possible with routes because we can't do that.
Yes.
It happens internally. I'm a little bit curious about the operator. Like, is this largely for like cert-manager installation or also like for kind of resource configuration?
It's only for the installation of the cert-manager. And the CS will be as usual, so the user can still use the CMCTL, or he can directly create the CS.
Cool, it's interesting. Like, I'm curious what problems. Like we know that cert-manager has like, there's like upgrades can be hard and things like that. I'm just curious, like, what problems you observed that made you maybe like write an operator.
Right. So the operator was chosen to have basically a definite fixed configuration of cert-manager. So we do not want to have too many variations in the configuration that would basically render into having too many scenarios, which goes beyond the testing scope, basically. So we wanted to have a different configuration, one thing. Second thing is we really want to monitor all the pods and enable metrics and everything. So we could have used Helm, but yeah, we found that Cooperator is more feasible to have this monitoring metrics and everything more easier for us. So.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, like best practices installation makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. I guess that's all I had for today's meeting. Great. Thanks, Geer.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Indeed, thank you. Do we have anything else on the calendar?
We do. We have a thing that I've put in, but it's kind of both Richard and I stemming back from a issue that we solved a while back, which was fixed by this community PR. The summary of this is that the upstream dependency we use for parsing JKS files, which is called keystore-go, they rewrote history upstream and changed a tag to point to a different version, and or to a different commit rather. That in turn permanently poisons the package because you can't, if you're installing direct from source, like go proxy equals direct, you will fail GoSum validation, which passes if you're using the Go proxy because that has the old version in it. So the actual change, which I looked into as part of this, that resulted in this comment. The actual change isn't malicious. It looks like a standard refactor, and they've gone about it the wrong way. But this is kind of like at the point where it's not acceptable for an open source project that we rely on to do this. Like this is a big no-no in Go as a language ecosystem. It's a big no-no generally in open source, I think, to rewrite history of a release thing. Certainly for just a refactor that doesn't have a runtime impact. If it was fixing a critical bug, I might be able to understand it more, but it's kind of not okay. Essentially, this is the second time that this particular dependency has broken us in some way in recent times. The other time was when the user changed his name on GitHub which in turn changed the import path and made things look confusing and scary as well. But there isn't necessarily a great thing that we can do here. So obviously we could fork the project and maintain our own fork of it. We could use a different JKS library, but we're still stuck with it sort of for older versions that we've already released. It'd be a very significant change to go back and change it. I'm sure there's other options, but ultimately we kind of have a dependency here that maybe isn't particularly safe to rely on, and that doesn't necessarily mean unsafe in a security meaning, but it is kind of unsafe as a dependency generally. So the question here is, what should we do about it? What do people feel about it? How should we react to this? We haven't said anything to the upstream maintainer yet, but maybe we should. Like the person who raised the issue that fixed it on our side did raise an issue on their side as well. But what do people think?
Is it like a project literally with a single maintainer who makes these decisions, which I guess like a single maintainer for like a high kind of like, you know, like a thing we rely on, maybe also doesn't seem like a good thing, like one person's run project. And also I'm curious if there's any alternatives that would seem like better from like kind of open source project quality perspective, like more maintainers and kind of like maybe defined process how they do things, which I guess this might be lacking.
Certainly are other JKS libraries. Like just from Googling, there's immediately this one comes up straight away. But whether or not that's any better, I don't know. Like certainly this one also seems to have an actual username in the import path, similar to how keystore-go does, which it may just be one person. That might be the nature of JKS support in Go.
I wondered if there was a tool or a service that gave an assessment of the quality of various dependencies, and where we could go and raise this incident as a sort of black mark against that particular dependency.
There kind of is with the Go report card stuff, which we link to on cert-manager. So that this would be the version for the dependency itself.
Okay.
Which gives it an A, but so it doesn't really reflect the fact that it rewrote history. But then they can't really, like, no tool can realistically do that.
It was just the casualness. The way the author of that package was just so blasé about the fact that the checksum had changed, and his response to the person that came and said there's a problem with the checksum in the Go database. Can you add another tag? He just said, oh yeah, sure, let's do it. It wasn't like he dug in, he didn't investigate what had gone wrong, or he was just trying to not dwell on the mistake that he'd made, like the mistake, like by the way, that I made yesterday. Yeah, I wondered if there was something like Go report card then that where it invites users to go and give feedback on different libraries. And if there isn't, then maybe we should do that. It'd be quite a useful tool.
I think that it is an honest mistake, of course. It should not have happened because of the consequences that we now see. However, like that might not have been clear to the person who develops this, or probably wasn't clear to him. And I guess there are other dependencies that also have this. I don't know if there are many other dependencies which also have these kind of problems. I would say the biggest problem for us is that with these kind of changes, there is some kind of fatigue that could come up, so that we say, okay, yeah, it's just another one of those kind of weird things in our dependencies that are maintained by just a single person, and then maybe we miss something that's really critical and really affects us. So I think that's the most important problem that this could create, this kind of fatigue for these kind of changes.
Yeah, and it's not like we check the source code of any of the other dependencies that we pull in. So the fact that this particular library came to our attention is an accident, but what's the point of all the software supply chain security stuff if we don't have a clue what source code we're compiling into our project?
That's true. And also, if there are more people depending on this particular part of the code, then like security bugs will also be found quicker. Like if we just in-tree this, clone it into cert-manager, then no one will import cert-manager just for that feature, right? So it will only the users of cert-manager will actually see if there is a vulnerability in that code. Now there might be other users of that JKS library that also find something wrong with it.
Oh yeah, I'm not proposing vendoring it or forking it.
I kind of think that forking it wouldn't be too bad. I don't think we'll have to change it much, but we don't have the bandwidth for that really. This is complicated as well somewhat. I should mention, since this is being recorded, the author of this is Ukrainian and probably has very, very much more important things going on in his life than worrying about rewriting history here. Like, and it's not a reflection on him as a person or anything like that. It's more that with the size that we're at and the level of trust people place in cert-manager, like we kind of have to be able to rely on our dependencies, and it's a technical aspect rather than anything personal about the person.
Yeah, I think it's also something very general. I think we have other dependencies. Like I have to check, but I assume that we have other dependencies that have the same kind of problems.
Yeah, you'd have to assume we do. Yeah.
I wonder, maybe that this would be a good exercise, kind of, if we could kind of see what parts of this library we're actually using, right? Because I assume that there are all the functionalities that the library exposes. Like what parts are we using, and how many lines are those parts? And maybe if it's very little, then maybe indeed it is a good idea to kind of pull it in and copy it to our own repository.
It's MIT licensed, so we would be legally okay to do that. And like the library itself isn't large.
Yeah, but I would counter just copying the whole library. I would like if it's just like 50 lines of code, then I think it would be okay to just copy paste it.
Yeah.
If it's more than that, I think maybe we just should start a conversation with the maintainer and ask him to be more cautious about making these kind of changes.
I guess this isn't something that is likely to change frequently, this kind of library, but I guess would we need to be aware of some kind of vulnerabilities and stuff. Exactly what do we use from there? Just a format conversion for the Java keystore stuff, which I'm not very familiar with.
For generating the keystore files themselves, like once we've issued a certificate, if someone requests the keystore JKS bit, we use this. There's also a use for it coming up, or for something like this coming up in Trust Manager, where we'll need to read and write JKS files.
I mean, we had been using like Go crypto fork for quite long period of time. So
It is maybe the easiest thing for us to do for now, like to reach out and just be sort of gently, like raise an issue on the repo and just gently poke and say, hey, look, we can't really have history being rewritten like this. Like, just real gentle touch. Like, the code is fine for this. Like, it works for us. It solves the problem. Like, if there's any other problems, then yeah, probably we drop it straight away. But like, it wasn't malicious. It was just a mistake. Maybe just gently ask nicely and draw a line under it for now.
is there any kind of like thing under which not changing your GitHub username and not doing things like this false, where you can say like, can you state that you abide by this policy or type of thing? Probably there isn't.
How do you mean? Sorry, I'm not sure I follow.
So, like, not, I mean, so that like, I mean, they changed their GitHub username, which like kind of caused this issue. They rewrote history, and there's probably other things that could potentially break us that they can do. Is there a way how we can ask them to abide by a certain policy that would prevent them from doing these kind of things? Is what I'm saying, rather than be like, oh, don't rewrite the history again.
Like a list of things. It's like, hey, like these generally accepted stuff.
Yeah, and like kind of go, don't like, I don't know, do they abide by the Go module sort of compatibility so that the, you know, things like that.
That would be a good start, wouldn't it?
The cert-manager dependency compliance list. Are you compliant to become a cert-manager dependency?
I wouldn't blame him if the response to that was sod off, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we should sponsor him probably. Like, he's some person who does it in his free time, and we are like, hey.
that would be nice. I'll take it as an action to go and reach out to him and sort of gently say, hey, like Go module, like the Go module compatibility guarantee is a reasonable ask, and it certainly wasn't followed by rewriting history in this way, because version 4.4.0 that he changed will now forever be tarnished, right? Like, you can't build from source on anything that depends on that anymore. I don't know if he can go back by reverting it. It's probably going to be difficult at this point, but I'll reach out and say that, and maybe just for now we just kind of keep on trucking, because the alternative is a lot more work.
Yeah, and these bigger changes are probably also like these can be part of the trust manager stuff that we're doing. Also, it would be like, what probably would be useful to kind of explain why this is a problem for us, because that's not super obvious. Even to me, it's not super obvious. I think I understand now, but it would be nice to kind of explain that. Right, cool. Are there any other items on the calendar? No, that's the last item, I think. Is that correct?
Actually,
it is the last, but Irbe might want to talk about something.
I mean, I had added like splitting CMCTL out of cert-manager to next, but I forgot to put it into the this week's. Like, I don't want it to be a long discussion, because I don't think we'll be doing it right now. I guess mostly was curious whether, like, I think that would be valuable to split it out for reasons. I was curious whether somebody had reasons to definitely not do it, because we have discussed how, you know, splitting it would help us with certain things. So like, it would be good to know whether it's something we are likely to do in the future, or whether it's something that for reasons we will never do. And like, personally, so there's like an attached issue to it, and I think it could be useful first, because we could then use it. It would be kind of nice to, maybe in my opinion, to use the CLI not just for cert-manager, but also for like our other open source projects where a CLI command could be useful. I can imagine, for example, in a approver policy, it might be nice to have a CLI command where you can check why your certificate requests are or are not approved by a certain policy, like these kind of things. And the second is the Helm dependency that's in cert-manager codebase because of the CMCTL. If we split it out, that would make it easier for us to manage, I think, some Kubernetes library cross dependencies and things like that.
See how they would.
I would say that if there is like a strong two-way dependency, then it's probably better to keep it in the cert-manager project. But I don't think that's the case for CMCTL. So it's probably mostly one way. So CMCTL depends on cert-manager, not the other way around. So I think then it's just fine to do this. And I would also, yeah, go ahead. I'll have a point for at the end. I'd
just say on video, like I fully agree that we need to split it. Like I totally 100% get it, and I don't think it'll be that hard. It would slightly change. Like one thing we would need to consider is that we attach built binaries of cmctl to our cert-manager releases currently, and people will expect to be able to download it from there. If we split it out, it's obvious to decouple the versioning of the CLI plugin from the release cadence of cert-manager, because often we don't change the CLI plugin and do release of cert-manager. But then how do we make it so that it's still easy for people to install and all that? We've also got like the Arch Linux build and package cmctl in their repositories natively, and we have to point at them to update things like that. But it's all easy stuff. I think it's just an obvious thing to do. Like the Helm dependency causes so much trouble if you need to update your dependencies. And going back, it gets worse and worse in time. Like if you try and update the dependencies for release 1.9 now, it's a nightmare because of Helm.
Cool. So yeah, I'm writing down the issues that versioning is something that needs to be considered, because also like cert-manager Helm release installs a job that runs the CTL in a container, and I guess we want to decide whether we want to have CMCTL completely different version where we just run this container as whatever is the latest version that isn't necessarily the version of cert-manager, or whether we somehow release them together and produce a manifest that has like the latest CMCTL version, image version that is the same version as cert-manager version. We also push those images.
So there we have like a two-way dependency, right? That might create some problems. For example, if we want to, not sure how we do it right now. I think we just look at the latest version on Helm. So we have this Helm install program in the library, in the command. So if we install, or if we use the CLI command in the container image that's installed as part of cert-manager, like it could be that it wouldn't be able to install the latest cert-manager version.
Why? There is like a version command that you can pass to CLI. Also, I was gonna backtrack on saying that we should, because like if we are going to use the CLI also for like CLI commands related to other projects, we might want to release more frequently, at least at the start, like, or not necessarily tied to cert-manager specifically. For example, if there's like a bunch of commands that we want to add there for trust for some reason, that it doesn't make sense really to wait for a cert-manager release to release this CMCTL version.
Does this maybe imply that rather than sort of going the whole hog and like cutting cmctl out of the cert-manager repo entirely and having it be a completely different project, we just add a different Go mod for that command, which I think you can do totally fine, and have it be in the repo, so we can still version it and use it as part of cert-manager and release it as part of cert-manager, but then also have the ability to push it out externally as well.
Then you have like a circular dependency, right? Because CMCTL also depends on cert-manager on the API.
Yeah, but does cert-manager depend on CMCutl on a code level or as a
No.
binary dependency? If it's a binary dependency, then it's not. It's fine. You just build CMCutl before you build anything in cert-manager, and you can use it there, and you can script that all
It's
fine.
not even a binary dependency, I think. I don't
Well,
think it.
if you add it in the images, it is, right?
I mean, but you just literally add a tag.
Oh,
Like,
so you would,
okay, I mean,
you would build the
okay.
image in the other repository then.
Yeah, I absolutely thought so.
Okay.
I didn't think that we would. I
Mhm.
don't see any reason why we would build CMCTL images in cert-manager repo if the project's elsewhere. We could, but
I mean, we'll have to duplicate all this image building logic to this CMCutl repository too. Then
I think the reason to keep it in would be that it makes it very clear if something breaks between CMCutl and cert-manager, because they're both in the same repo, so they can have this same CI pipeline where they use together in tandem. Like it obviously that's achievable in an external repo, but it's just more work to do it, and you have to juggle the competing numbers, like version numbers. But if they're in the same, you take the whole repo as a snapshot, and it'll be clear if something breaks, especially at an API level. Like obviously it failed to build at that point.
But if we wanted to use for other projects as well, like I don't know how much it is. It just okay. It will be obvious if it breaks for cert-manager, but not obvious if it breaks for something else.
True, but cert-manager is more important, and so like cert-manager installs CMCutl as part of its Helm chart as well. So there is a dependency there that is made slightly easier to navigate. Like the version of CMCutl that cert-manager will install is whatever version is at the tag when cert-manager was released. But we could always just like install a named version of CMCutl, and then that problem kind of goes away in the tag in the Helm chart. Maybe like keeping it in the repo isn't something I feel strongly about, for sure.
Yeah, like I just think that if we are going to use it for other projects, then we may want to release it more frequently. It may make sense to release it more frequently, and therefore, like having the same versioning.
No, I am advocating for a different versioning scheme.
Yeah.
Sure, but whether it's in the same repo or not, I think it makes sense to have a different versioning scheme.
Like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, but how would we? I mean, if we kept it in the same repo, where would we release it to?
Anywhere, like we can have it in like built into a GCS bucket easily.
As in, it's downloaded from GitHub from GitHub releases by most users, and that's kind of convenient. So
we can keep, like, if it's in the same repo, then it's trivial to also attach a tagged version with any release, right? You can, it's the same snapshot that you got whenever we tagged it. You just build CMCutl in that repo and attach it to that release like we do today. But then you can also,
if you didn't have a cert-manager release but wanted to release CMCTL.
Yeah, but then you can have a separate pipeline entirely that is just CMCutl. So you'd have like the one that goes with a cert-manager release, which probably you wouldn't choose to design it like that in the first place, but for legacy reasons, you could always have that there just to keep it working for people, and then have a separate release pipeline with separately installable things where we can release at a higher frequency.
Yeah, I guess, like, I mean, yeah, I kind of like the fact that you can download stuff from GitHub releases, and I don't see how we could do it like with because like we wouldn't create separate cert-manager release just with CMCTL with non-cert-manager version, so therefore it would have to just be in a bucket and like downloadable as some script. I just find like that's slightly worse user experience than there being a separate repo with like, you know, you just download the release from there. You can see the release notes and, you know, like see what PRs went in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I guess like this is worth more investigation when I guess like my TLDR is that everybody thinks that this is worth doing to some extent, either separate repo or, as Ashley said, separate Go mod file.
Yeah, the technical details can come later, but I think this is a slam dunk to do.
So technical limitation or a technical issue would be the only limitation that we can still encounter to implement this. Everyone agrees that it's a good thing to do. It might still be like a technical reason not to do it, maybe, that we haven't thought about or haven't really figured out fully.
It's conceivable.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, can we make the same argument for the CA injector? Put that in a separate repo.
I had an issue open for this like a while ago. And James Manley had some counter arguments. Well, I mean, it was mostly about release.
Okay.
Let's find the issue.
I have another question that maybe is related to that. I was wondering, why do we allow in CA injector to reference a certificate instead of secret? I would
don't
say that
actually. I was also curious about that. Like, I don't see any reason for doing it.
And it complicates it quite a bit. Like the logic becomes more complex because, like, also when you're watching for changes, you watch for changes in the certificate, and then you kind of need to figure out what secret is linked to that, and then you need to figure out. Well, it's quite a bit of work. So I would like to maybe have a version without certificate support, but I guess for legacy reasons, it will be hard to kind of fully remove it, which is unfortunate, I think. Who is depending on this CA injector actually? Controller runtime is, right?
Cube
Or-
Builder somehow. I think
And
cluster API.
Are they using the certificates feature?
I don't know, but I'm not sure if we can remove this. Like, I added a flag in this version where you cannot watch certificates. I'm not sure if we can make that change where we literally remove that functionality altogether, because that will be breaking. Okay. I'm not sure if we can reliably figure out that no one is using it just because we don't find anyone who is using it and just remove it.
I agree. I don't think we can. I think if we built like a reduced version of cert-manager that was like a different install without CA injector, that would probably be a valuable thing to most people and would simplify a lot of things for people. Like a different Helm chart kind of thing that doesn't include it at all. But I feel like our default published release is kind of stuck with it, which isn't the end of the world.
But we still need to inject the secret into the RBAC. Also the custom resources, right?
Validating, mutating webhook configurations. We are using CA injector to inject the CA. It's there. The issue that I earlier opened was not to remove CA injector from Helm from the release manifest. I was imagining to split it out into a separate project. For reasons that also, like, for example, internally we are using it like a standalone thing for like some separate webhook things that need CA injector. And I know that some other projects are using it in a similar way, not necessarily as part of cert-manager. So it felt like maybe valuable as a standalone project.
It's also like it is closely related to Trust Manager, I think. Like there are quite a few things that are very similar in Trust Manager and CA injector. but like the way that you configure it is different, right? In Trust Manager, you have these bundles that contain all the configuration. In CA Injector, you have these annotations that you add, I think. So I think you add both an annotation on the custom resource definition and on the config map or secret. I don't, I think it's secret, yeah. So on the secret and on the custom resource definition. That's a way that you kind of indicate that these have to be, so that the content of the secret has to be injected into the validating webhook, for example, or the CRT. So I was wondering, is it maybe possible to use the bundle API for that? Is there like a case for that, or is there a case maybe to add support for annotations in Trust Manager itself?
I'm skeptical about annotations because it creates a parallel way of expressing every single field in the API, which we have with cert-manager. Like, I'd rather have one entry point to the API that we can control tightly, and then you don't end up with weird edge cases. Like we just landed a PR in cert-manager that adds support for like specifying street addresses in annotations rather than in certificates. But then you deal with problems of like, well, how do you specify multiple when one can contain a comma and things like that? So we've ended up with like a CSV escaping thing that, like, it just ends up being this whole other thing. I'd rather avoid annotations if possible. But CA Injector, which is based entirely around annotations, could have as a source a Trust Manager bundle or config map. Like it currently, CA Injector has secrets, certificates, or the Kubernetes API Server CA certificate. Reading from the website, like it could add a bundle. Although there is a circular dependency there because Trust Manager has in its Helm chart a dependency on cert-manager. so maybe that's not a problem. I don't know.
Trust Manager uses CA Injector, is that what you mean?
No, it uses cert-manager though.
But what does it use from cert-manager? Just
for its own webhook, it creates a certificate resource for that. I would rather not have that dependency, to be clear, but I think Trust Manager should run entirely independently, but currently it has a certificate resource in its manifests.
Oh yeah, so it depends on the cert-manager Go library.
No, it depends on cert-manager installed via Helm. Like it depends on it at runtime. That's install time, rather.
Really?
Yeah. Again, would like to change. No, it's using CA Injector. Sorry, yeah. It's using CA Injector to do that. But yeah, there's a certificate resource that it uses, and then it has CA Injector there. So actually, having CA Injector as a separate project would massively help Trust Manager as well, and would be a good test case if we were to split it out, because Trust Manager could then just depend on CA Injector. Although it's still going to struggle with the generating the certificate without cert-manager, but yeah, it would still have the dependency on CA Injector, but not on cert-manager, which is still a better place to be.
There was like for like that Trust Anchors cap. I don't think that went into the design that got merged, but there was a discussion from SIGAuth folks about referencing those cluster bundle resources from webhook, validating and mutating webhook configurations directly. If that ever happened, I guess we wouldn't. At that point, CA Injector would to some extent become a little bit legacy, and we could just I guess it would be worth to see whether this effort is going to go forward before like doing extra work related, like maybe to kind of specifying stuff. I mean, obviously, it would be a while till like Kubernetes version that implements this becomes like only supported cert-manager Kubernetes version. But yeah, it's probably something that's worth considering.
And combining trust manager and C injector, is that something seems like a good idea?
You mean like using bundle either as a source?
I don't know
But-
how to do it, but
So like,
I was thinking initially maybe just my initial plan would be to just put the two controls in one binary, and then from that point on, like integrate them and make them work together better. Like support, for example, a bundle as a source, and kind of combine those caches and so on.
but then like, why would you specifically put these together? Because we still want like it's standalone as well, right?
Well, I mean the use cases are very similar, right? It's just that the target is very specific. Like for trust managers, the target is a config map in each namespace. For C injector, the target is a validation webhook.
Like I mean, I don't fully understand why would you want to combine controllers. Like the way the CI injector works at the moment, it can use as a data source either a secret or take the CA from kubeconfig, and it can inject it into CRD, validating, mutating web configuration or API service. We could add a new source, which would be like bundle or a config map. And I guess if it was bundle, we would again run into a problem of like, are bundles CRDs installed or not? We may then as well add config map as a source, and because bundle syncs to config map, that makes more sense to me rather than including the bundle dependency in CA injector.
Yeah, I agree. Like CA injector would support the target. That's convincing to me. I see what you mean, Tim, that there's a massive overlap. Like Trust Manager could easily do everything that CA injector does. Like Trust Manager currently solves the problem of generating bundles and placing them into config maps, but it's a pain to use those config maps if your target is a Kubernetes resource that you want to update, which is effectively what CA injector is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be a target on a bundle, like, but then you need to configure your bundle before your webhooks, which be fun. Really, validating webhooks should be able to load their certificates from config maps. Maybe there's some good reason that isn't allowed or isn't the case, or maybe it is the case. Well, that would seem to make sense to me.
So maybe that's
I guess
the main reason that we wouldn't want to like generalize the targets and trust manager to also support validation webhooks and so on. Because with trust anchors, it will be supported at some point natively.
maybe, like, I don't think there's design even for that.
Oh.
But like, yeah, I guess like there's a lot of things that can't be done when the validating webhook's not working yet. Like you might have validation for config maps, so you don't want to. I guess there's like reason why they kind of inlined it, although probably the same problem then would be with trust bundles.
I suppose the CA bundle is for the benefit of the Kubernetes API server as a client. So it would then require that the client is able to read config maps successfully, and it introduces all these weird like permissions questions and dependency questions. I guess it's easy to just hard code it into the resource, because you have to be able to read the resource anyway. If you can't read that, then you can't. None of this matters. Actually, I'm aware we're running out of time, and one quick question. Sanity check me. Like our trust manager validating webhook configuration has admission review versions V1 and V1 beta 1, but we don't have those versions of the trust manager CRDs. We only have V1 alpha 1. Is that just wrong?
That's version of it's not a version of the custom resource. I cannot quite remember what exactly it is. I think it's the admission API sort of thing in Kubernetes, and you definitely don't need the V1 beta 1 anymore because you removed it in cert-manager.
Yeah, I think it's the admission review version.
Yeah, but what admission?
There's an admission review resource, I think.
Oh, it's a different resource entirely. So we don't need V1 beta 1 because that's deprecated and removed from Kubernetes.
Yep. And we also removed it from cert-manager already like a while ago. I think it was 1.19.
Yeah, I'm sure this was just copy pasted across that. So I'll raise the PR and remove that now that I understand. It's not related to our CRDs, it's related to Kubernetes resources. I can do that now.
All right. I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, cheers.